For many of us, starting a family feels like a natural path, but for a lot more people than we might think, it's actually a really tough road. We're talking emotional challenges and often big financial ones too. It's not just a private thing. It's pretty common. So today we're doing a deep dive into a major government document that tackles this exact issue head on. Our mission is to unpack Executive Order 14216. This was signed by President Donald J. Trump back on February 18, 2025, and then it showed up in the official Federal Register a few days later, February 24th. If you want to look it up, the Federal Register is basically the government's daily journal. All the official rules, notices, presidential stuff goes in there. Now, what's an executive order? Simply put, it's like a memo from the president. Tells the government agencies, okay, do this. We're going to break down what this specific order means for families, what problems it's trying to fix, and what actions it actually requires. We'll try to keep it clear, everyday language, and explain why it might matter to you. Maybe you're thinking about kids, or supporting friends, or just navigating healthcare today. Okay, so let's start with the why. Why was this order needed in the first place? It really gets back to a fundamental issue, the hurdles people face trying to build their families.
Yeah, and the scale is really quite something. The order itself points out that as many as 1 in 7 couples can't conceive a child naturally. That's well, it's like a small number. It affects millions. And when conception is difficult, something that should be, joyful, it often turns into this really taxing experience, emotionally taxing, financially taxing. And if you think about the bigger picture, infertility isn't new, obviously, but maybe there's more awareness now. Plus, you add the financial pressures young families are under today, it sort of pushes this issue onto the policy agenda.
Right, it's more than just a statistic. It's personal, it changes lives, strains relationships, and it can really put a damper on those dreams of having kids. You see it affecting people, maybe folks, in their 20s, 30s, 40s directly, or maybe their friends, their family members. So, okay, the challenge is clear. And for many facing this, in vitro fertilization, or IVF, becomes this real source of hope. For anyone not familiar, IVF is basically where fertilization happens outside the body in a lab setting. Then the embryo is transferred. It's complex, definitely a medical procedure, but it works for a lot of people. But that hope, it often comes with a pretty hefty price tag, doesn't it?
It really does. IVF absolutely offers hope, as the order says, for people dealing with fertility issues. It's a powerful tool. But the big hurdle, and the executive order calls this out specifically, is the cost. It mentions figures like $12,000 to $25,000 per cycle. Per cycle.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's, a massive amount for most people. Plus, many need more than one cycle.
That cost, that's really where it gets tough for so many families. Let's just think about that number for a second. $12,000 to $25,000. For someone in, say, their late 20s up to maybe their early 50s, that's like a down payment on a car. Or maybe even what you'd pay for a whole year of daycare. It's not just pocket change. It's the kind of cost that can seriously impact a family's finances, adding a whole layer of stress onto something that's already really emotional. So the administration has put its policy out there, but saying something is policy is one thing. What actual concrete steps does this executive order make the government take?
Right, it does lay out specifics. The policy statement is pretty direct. It is the policy of my administration to ensure reliable access to IVF treatment, including by easing unnecessary statutory or regulatory burdens to make IVF treatment drastically more affordable. So that's the goal. And then Section 2 gets into the action items. It says, within 90 days of the order being signed, so about 3 months, the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy has to give the President a list of policy recommendations. And these recommendations need to focus on 2 main things. First, protecting IVF access, and second, aggressively reducing out-of-pocket and health plan costs for IVF.
Okay, aggressively reducing costs.
Yeah.
That sounds promising. But you mentioned it works within existing laws and budgets. So the order itself doesn't create, like, a new legal right for someone to demand cheaper IVF, right?
Exactly. That's what the general provisions in Section 3 clarify. It operates within the current legal and financial framework. It's not something an individual can typically sue over to enforce directly.
So how does it have teeth then? How can it actually lead to that drastically more affordable outcome? What can that Assistant for Domestic Policy actually do?
Well, its power lies in directing the focus of the executive branch. The president is telling various federal agencies, maybe HHS, Department of Labor, DoD for military families, others involved in healthcare, to look hard at this issue. Yeah. The recommendations might suggest things like finding ways to expand coverage in existing federal health programs, perhaps, or identifying regulations that might be outdated and are unintentionally driving up costs, or even promoting best practices for insurance coverage. It's really about coordinating government efforts, finding efficiencies, and leveraging existing authority to make progress on affordability, streamlining things.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about marshaling the existing resources and authority. So, thinking practically then, what could this realistically mean down the line for families, for people, maybe yourself trying to navigate this? How does an order like this actually trickle down to make things easier or cheaper?
While the potential impact could be quite significant, even without new laws immediately, just having this executive order, this high-level focus, that raises awareness. Patients, doctors, insurance companies, they all take notice when the White House prioritizes something like this. And by mandating that review specifically aimed at cutting costs, out-of-pocket costs, health plan costs, the explicit goal is making IVF accessible to more people. It kicks off a process, a focused effort to find those practical ways to ease the financial burden, that huge strain we talked about. It's about using policy levers to make that path to parenthood hopefully a little less difficult.
So fundamentally, it's a top-down signal, a directive aimed squarely at the money side, the affordability side, and the bureaucratic hurdles, trying to make this incredibly important, often life-changing procedure more reachable for everyday people dreaming of having a family, addressing a real need. All right, so wrapping up our deep dive today, we've looked at this executive order, EO 14216. It's a clear attempt to tackle the high cost and accessibility issues around IVF, aiming to support family building in the U.S. A significant step, really.
Absolutely. And, this specific focus on making IVF affordable, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? It raises this bigger question. How might this kind of directive shape how we as a society think about family planning moving forward? And healthcare coverage, government support for these really personal life choices. What does this signal for the future? Will we see more initiatives like this?
That's a really interesting thought to leave things on. Definitely something to reflect on the nuances of these policies and how they might ripple outwards, affecting individuals and families for years to come.